Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Beer Ladies podcast. I'm Thandi, and I'm joined today with Lisa and Katie. Hello, ladies.
Hey.
And we're speaking about something a little tangential, but a lot kind of relevant to the three of us tonight. And we're talking about travels and beer. You know, we're going to go through a couple of our own recent trips and recent travels, be it short or far away, and we're going to comment blasely on the state of the beer scene in state countries that we were in or locally, and we're just going to, have a bit of a chat about beer and traveling and what you look for when you travel. Do you travel specifically to visit breweries or to go to festivals, or is it, much of a, go with the flow and see what's local vibe? So we're going to go with a little bit of that today, so a little bit of a casual one. And before we get into that and what are we drinking, I'm going to just remind you all, and we do love it when you hang out with us on social media, whether it's Twitter or Mastodon or Instagram or Facebook. We are at Beer Ladies Pod wherever you want to find us. We've also got beerladiespodcast@gmail.com, and beerladiespodcast.com is our website where you can find the whole back catalogue for everything. You can even find the links to buying us a pint or buying a t-shirt or merch or whatever you want. It's all there, just a reminder for you. Okay, friends, so housekeeping out the way. Let's talk about travels, but let's first get our beers. So, Katie, we're going to start with you.
So I just came back from London yesterday, and I have obviously picked up something on the flight because I'm a little bit congested and I'm not feeling the best. So I am drinking a non-alcoholic IPA from Dot Brew.
Ooh, I enjoyed it.
Nice.
It was very good.
Yeah. A non-alcoholic hop-forward IPA, soft body, fruity aromatics. This is what it looks like. Ooh, can you see that?
Oh,
Very
yes.
nice.
Yeah.
Fairly bright goldish, little hazy.
And it's
looks
hazy
like a
and
beer.
it's nice. It's nice.
Yeah, and this is... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Katie.
Oh, no, I was going to say, it tastes... I think you'd know that it wasn't a double IPA. But yeah, honestly, you wouldn't know that was non-alcoholic. Yeah, I think this is the one, Lisa.
I was going to say, is it the one with the magic New Zealand grape yeast, I want to say? Something like that?
I don't know, but how do you know if it is the one or not? It doesn't say it on its anywhere on the tin if it is the yeast from the skin of a
I think
New
it
Zealand
must
grape.
be, because that was going to be a non-alcoholic IPA, and I had it too, and I had the same impression. I think you might think it was just a low alcohol beer, like maybe sort of 2 or 3-ish%, but I really enjoyed it. I think that's what I'm going to be giving another shot to.
That's very cool. And nice, another reason to have a few non-alcoholics, in the cupboard or the fridge, because, when you're sick, you don't really feel like getting that pissed. So yeah, good reason.
Yeah.
All right, Lisa, what you got?
I have the Western Herd Spanish Point, which is their American Pale Ale. And, I've been going for this one a lot recently since it's been out the past couple of weeks. It's brewed with Simcoe, Centennial, Chinook, and Idaho 7, but it's got on the can a lovely little sort of woodcut looking of a Spanish ship.
So pretty. I love that can.
I have to say, Western Herd have some beautiful, beautiful can art, and it says on the back, the invincible Spanish Armada crushed against the Clare coast in September 1588. In one of the most violent storms of its time, it marked the end of a journey for many Spanish mariners aboard, but the beginning of a legacy in this wild part of our County Clare. And then they talk about basically, yay, American Pale Ale after that, which is fair enough. And it's a lovely sort of deep golden color. It's probably a little hard to see here, but definitely, I wouldn't say hazy, slightly cloudy, but not hazy like a hazy kind of thing. But I really like it. It's very clean, very hop forward. But I find I've been going for this one a lot lately, so it seemed appropriate for a travel theme.
And I got married in the I got married in Spanish Point. Well, I had my reception was in the Armada Hotel, aptly named because of the Spanish Armada.
Oh, that's so fun.
Oh, that's perfect. It's really nice. Yeah.
I love that. Well, spoiler alert, folks, when I went to South Africa, I had great plans of coming back with a whole lot of beers. And initially, I actually wanted to do an episode like this where I gave Lisa and Katie and Christina, if she was available, beers from South Africa so we could try. But I am absolutely goddamn useless. And I was there for 3 weeks, did not bring any beer home. And so I've gone local tonight. So I've got Clancy's can number 11. It's the maple and pecan brown ale.
Ooh, lovely.
There. It is. It's a lovely beer. I've had it before. It's a 7.5%. And it's just beautiful. You know, I'm always a little nervous about things like nuts in a beer, because either they can make it really oily, which will affect head retention, or they taste artificial, which is kind of a weird thing. Or people will say that they're in the beer, but you don't really taste them at all. So there's a really fine balance of getting nuts in a beer. And maple's the same. Maple is a really strong flavor if you have it on its own, but when you blend it with a whole lot of things, it tends to just add a little bit of a sweetness. In a way, I think that's what it does. So this one's, you know, very dark brown ale, small head, but that's to be expected. And it's decadent. It's lovely.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed that one too. And I had the same impression. I was also worried with the maple. Sometimes it can feel very much of a muchness, but I think you get the maple flavor without a heavy, you know, mouthfeel. So it's a really lovely beer. I've got one in my fridge as well. So I'm just waiting for it to be like the perfect dessert beer again. So
Indeed. It does feel still cold enough to be able to enjoy a beer like this.
yeah.
So I'm kind of happy. I mean, having just come from hot weather, it actually wasn't as hot as I thought it was going to be. It was averaging between 28 and 30. Some days it was a bit cooler, sort of 24, but it was really warm, mostly sunny, and I wore flip-flops for 3 weeks. So coming back to what was probably one of the worst weeks in March, where it was snowing and cold and freezing, and I was like devastated. So happy to have a bit of a winter warmer, even though we are just about at the end of March and very much into spring.
Yeah, the clocks change next weekend.
Oh God, already?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because they've already done it in North America. So we're in that weird period where it's off a different number.
It's a great
hours.
reason when you have a call that you don't really want to go to, you just break off and say, "Oh, sorry, I got the time wrong." Ooh. Not that I would ever do such a thing.
No,
never.
Life pro tips from Katie. I don't know if your Outlook or Gmail based, but they both just handle the time zone. So
yeah.
Okay, so
usually
we'll keep that one on the deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lisa, tell us about your recent travels. Where did you go? Why did you go? And what were you doing? And tell us some stuff about your travels.
I will. So I've had 2 recent-ish trips, both very short, but I think some interesting beers both times. So first I went to Los Angeles for 4.5-ish days, which is interesting time zone wise, jet lag wise. But again, there's going to be an important beer pro tip related to this. But went to LA for Gallifrey 1, which is the annual giant Doctor Who convention there. We had a great time. It was wonderful. Just me and my smaller one. So 2 of us went on a girls trip. Nerdy girls trip, because we're not normal. But I will say the beer we had, I had, obviously she's 8, she wasn't drinking any beer, although she did observe. But we went our first night to this really interesting little tap room called Surfridge Brewing Company. Apparently they are on both coasts in the US. They have an East Coast location and a West Coast location. They also have a vineyard, just interesting stuff, but had a lovely little tasting flight. And because in America, there's this whole sort of kids in tap rooms discourse, and people are either thrilled or angry, but they had a whole dedicated little children's play area. So we were kind of living our best lives there for a little bit. But I will say bit of a rookie mistake for me, in that, we hadn't really eaten. We were going to get food there. Food van did not show up for quite a while. So I was just trying to really have just tiny bits of the tasting flight. But even that, American beers, on the whole tend to be so much stronger than what we're used to here in Ireland, that by by like midway through the tasting tray, which was small, I was feeling like, oh, this is, and add in the jet lag and everything else. And I was like, oh, this is going to be really tough to have to power through while we wait for the pretzel van to come. But we had to wait for the pretzel van to come because pretzels, it's important. This was, we'd committed at this point. So I will say, long story short, the next day I did not feel amazing, had to sleep in a little bit, have a bit of a lie-in and miss the first couple of panels, but fine after that, just a bit of a headache. But what was interesting about the beers was, I think seeing this shift away from some of the hazier pale ales, seeing some true, West Coast IPAs, which makes sense because we were in California, but also even the pale ales were like true pale ales. They weren't sort of a little bit cloudy, a little bit hazy. Again, they were stronger than what we would get here, but, very much more that kind of classic, true to style. And there was even a really nice Vit beer that was very much like, say, an Allagash White or along those lines, but again, very much true to style, not going off in a direction. So I don't know if this is this particular brewery's kind of jam of doing kind of classic styles, because they also had a really nice oatmeal stout and a fest beer. So again, just kind of straight up the styles, just a little bit kind of stronger than what we're used to, but really interesting. And then even in the airport on the way back, we stopped at, and I had to look it up, but it was the Santa Monica Brew Works, again, the sort of tap room in the airport, where we paid $70 for a pretzel and a beer and a Coke and a sandwich. So just, you're in an airport. Yeah, you're a captive audience. But I will say it was a gorgeous, gorgeous pale ale. And it's the kind of thing where, you go on Untapped, and because it's a 5.6% pale ale, you see people be like, not extreme enough now. And I'm like, this is lovely. It's clean. It's fresh. It was just, I think, really kind of perfect for an airport where you might be sitting for a while. You don't want to have anything too crazy because you're in an airport and, come on. But I just thought that was interesting that there's still that kind of, at least sort of, perception there that you're getting, that everything has to be extreme and has to be this and that. And yes, they were stronger, but I felt like the things that were really standing out were just true to style, just kind of right on the money for what they should have been. So that was interesting. I don't know if it's a trend, but I like to see it. Now, again, maybe that's self-selecting, but it was interesting. And then I'll tell you about my other quick trip, which was just up to Belfast, but I'll pause and maybe we'll ruminate on the pale ales and stuff first, because I have very different thoughts, positive as well, about my trip to Belfast, but it's just different direction. So
the only really thing that I kind of want to say is that if this is a trend that's going to eventually come here, I am extremely excited, because I really miss pale ales that are clear, that have got some sort of malt base that is not oats, is not hazy, and isn't overly juicy. I want the sort of balanced, malt and hop bitterness in a clear beer that is sessionable and easy to drink, and that you don't have to think about too much, and that doesn't have 12 varieties of hops. I'm actually really miss beers like this, whether it's a West Coast IPA or a pale ale that's just a solid pale ale. I'd be so thrilled if we could get some more of those here.
Yeah, I was super stoked to see them. And I have to say, there were some other really interesting things that I was like, oh, those are interesting. I'm going to try them later. And I think similar to your trip, Thandi, later did not come. There just was not time, especially when you're the only adult looking after a small person. You can't just,
I mean, to be fair, you spent 4 days and you'd probably traveled for 2.5 of them.
It was a lot of travel. It was a lot of travel, but
I can't imagine going to LA for such a short time. But I'm very, very proud of you that you did that. That's so cool.
This is what you can do when you have points. Points are, points make everything possible. So that's, that's the pro tip. In fact, we'll come back to this on the Belfast thing, because that involved a lot of points too. So free hotel. So
nice. And so what it sounds like is that a lot of the almost back to basics brewing started to show up again. So nothing with crazy ingredients, and nothing that was, even though it's base level stronger, but nothing that was 12.5% that really only needed to be 5, or that's
cool. There were a couple of them here and there that I saw places and again, there's at the hotel next to the hotel we were staying, there's this sort of pizza place where you can also, where they give you a wristband and you tap your own beers as, and then you rinse them and all of the things. But they did have a couple of things on, but I did not get to go there because they ran out of food. So we walked in and we waited to be told they'd run out of food and then went back to the other hotel and gave up, which I think has been a trend of the last couple of places we've gone to in the States, is they've run out of food. And we've been like, how does this happen? But no infrastructure.
That's very strange to me.
Yeah.
Supply chain issues, right?
That's what they kept saying. And they did have a couple of things on tap that were, unnecessarily cucumbery or unnecessarily, something thrown in. But maybe they were good. Didn't get to try them because they'd run out of food. So had to give up.
Well, yes, food is important when you're drinking. I mean,
yeah,
absolutely. Especially if you're traveling a long distance, you need to stay hydrated. You need to be getting sleep, and that can be hard when you're, jet lagged. It's, So important pro tips: stay hydrated, drink lots of water, all of those things. And I feel like probably the other takeaway is you're probably more tired and more tipsy than you think if you've been traveling all day and not been eating and all the things. So you don't want to wake up with a bad headache, especially when you have a smallish child who's like, now we're going to play Zelda. And you're like, oh God.
Oh, don't talk to me about that. I remember the
can't think of anything worse.
Now we're going to play Yu-Gi-Oh, man, with the cards. And you'd put down a card. It's like, Mom, that's a trap card. You can't play it there. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know these things. Anyway, I suppose mine are a little bit older in that one of them can now drink, but doesn't drink beer.
Yeah, the older ones don't seem interested, do they? It's a thing.
Yeah, is it? I think it is a thing. They're just not interested in alcohol, really.
You need to go back to our episode from last week with Martin Cornell. He was talking about how, all of the generations have almost diverged away from what their parents drink. So, just because we're all big beer drinkers, our kids are probably not going to be.
Yeah,
they're
just not that interested.
Going to go to cocktails, or they're going to go to something else. I'm not sure. Or maybe it'll be within the beer spectrum, but it won't be the same styles. That's the other way that it could go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, my son has told me that he doesn't want to drink, so.
Yeah, there you go. And I think there's an interesting marketing challenge there too for that generation, where if they do something different, but everything is like this, especially what comes to mind for me is like hops, because if you ask, my almost 18-year-old, what's beer made of, the first thing he'll say is hops. And you're like, well, actually, no, but that's the perception for people in their, late teens, early 20s, is beer is made from hops. That's the only thing they know, because that's what's on all the adverts, whether it's craft or even not. It's like hops. You're like, it's such a water, malt. These are important. So
yeah, totally. Okay, so then you went to Belfast. Tell us about that.
I did, yeah, and I went to Belfast for a very quick, weekend thing, but obviously that is a much more reasonable, quick weekend trip because it's 2 hours on the train, just hop in, go around town. But what I thought was so interesting was the couple of places I went. First of all, made sure I went to the Sunflower and got some stuff on cask, and that was lovely. And then I went a couple of other places that are sort of new to me that I hadn't been to before, that I've been told by some locals, oh, go here, they always have really good craft beer on tap. But when I got to some of these, again, I won't sort of name and shame because that's kind of the wrong thing, but they had some really good local bottles, but nothing that I would even think of as sort of craft on tap. Like they had a Blue Moon tap, that kind of a thing. And I'm like, it's too bad that they clearly want to support local with like their bottles, which is great. And I have to say, I saw Heaney in bottles everywhere. It made me so happy because I love Heaney, just gorgeous beer. So I did have a couple of those, and I have to say, also very, very important call out as I went to the Lyric Theatre to see a show there. Amazing bottle list, Heaney and bottles. So I was like, oh, I'm in a theater and I'm getting good beer. Oh my God, because certainly you go anywhere in Dublin, it's like, here's your Heineken, and
I know
that's your option. So it was just really nice to see, an arts venue supporting, the local producers, and that was great.
Oh, the Helix used to have Mel's, didn't it? I'm wondering who has replaced them.
That's a good question. Yeah, and I feel like the Abbey has one or two local bottles, but certainly nothing on draft, or and even it's not that many bottles, but this was nice.
That said, I don't know if I would trust craft on tap at an arts venue
It might be
or at a concert venue, because
old.
it just may not sell quick enough. And I'm not,
It's fair. Yeah.
with all the love in the world, I just don't know if the staff of that kind of a venue are going to love those lines like a pub would.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. There was definitely, this was definitely bottles versus anything on tap. But what really struck me about all of the places where, with the exception of the Deer's Head, where I had to stop in, where they make their own beer and it's lovely. And I had a really nice time there. What I did keep seeing everywhere was Verdant. And I was like, Verdant seems to have taken over every tap in Belfast. And I like Verdant, but I was surprised. I was like, it's just a funny combination.
And Dublin, because while you were in Belfast, I was at Underdog for a homebrew club meeting, and Verdant had a bit of a tap takeover there too. So I think that there was some targeted marketing campaign by Verdant. They were just everywhere.
Yeah, or maybe they have a new distributor or something, but they were just everywhere. And it really struck me as I saw them everywhere. I had some of them on tap, and again, it was fresh, it was lovely, it was great, no complaints about it, but I just thought it was funny that instead of anything local, it was sort of Verdant everywhere. So maybe they'd had tap takeovers there as well. Maybe that's what was going on, was kind of the remnants of that. But it was just a really funny thing to see that just this one craft brand sort of overtaking everything local, everything, even other things from even that part of England. I was like, oh, they're just everywhere. So fair play to you guys, however you're doing it. But it was just really interesting. So yeah, I don't know quite what to make of it. It was just a trend.
Did you get much cask?
I did get a couple. Again, mostly Verdant, because that's what there was. Which again, no complaints about it. It was lovely. It was fresh. I did have one sort of more local beer, and I'm now blanking on what it was. But I would say that where I had the most, properly sort of, properly local beer was, again, going to the Deer's Head, and always have to shout out the Deer's Head because they've got those wonderful bag hooks that look like deer's heads, and I think that's fantastic. Just wish I had a little more time, but I will be going back up in May for another concert, so hopefully I can do a little bit more sort of reconnaissance. But yeah, it was just really interesting to see Verdant everywhere. So maybe that's a question to anyone who works for Verdant. Do you guys have a big plan? What's happening here? Or is this just kind of the natural state of things? I don't know. It was just really interesting because I know I had quite a few of their beers when they were at the Fidelity Festival, and I know there's a lot of sort of potential collaboration stuff going on, which again is great. It was just funny how omnipresent it was suddenly. So
yeah, that is quite strange. Excuse me, I've never been to Belfast, so how
field
about,
trip?
I know we it's ridiculous, but it's so close, just has never happened. So how about a couple of tips or tricks for people that have, like me, never been and want to make the most of their trip there? Katie,
I've never been over. I've never been overnight. I've been on a day trip. That's it, with children. So I haven't. I've never been in a pub in Belfast. How about that?
Oh, well, there are definitely like a lot of really nice ones. So I think, again, I'm going to keep shouting out the Deer's Head because it's so nice. But there are a couple, just very much in the city center. And I know there's one or two slightly further out that are meant to be really good that I've not made my way to. But I think, it is, it's still like quite compact and quite walkable. I think the only thing is you kind of want to make sure you know where you're going first, just because there are some parts that are, not even getting into sort of the more complicated stuff, but there are in Dublin some parts that are just kind of derelict, or you just want to be mindful of where you're going. Because I will say that was one thing coming back from the university area over by Queen's University, which is beautiful, and lots of little shops, pubs, clubs, to kind of back to the city center. There is kind of a part in the middle that's not as nice, but I was on the bus, so it was fine. But I think there's a little cluster kind of right around the Cathedral Quarter of really good pubs. That's one place to look out for. And then again, there's some places out by the university that are really, really fun, really inclusive, and I would say some that are quite family friendly too. So it doesn't have to all be, just adults only. But definitely a mix.
Do Boundary have a tap room up there? Have
they do. Yes,
or...
I did stop in there. Yes, at the John Hewitt is what they took over, and that is really nice too. And they had some again, they had a lot of Verdant as their guest beers, but their own stuff was lovely and very knowledgeable staff, very friendly, all, more than willing to give you a taste of something to see if you would like it, and are not offended if you're like, oh, that one's not for me. They'll have a good idea of what you might prefer instead. Because I did have a sample of something, and it was just because I know it's a particular hop I didn't like. Once I tried it, I was like, oh, this is not for me. But they're like, oh, okay. And then steered me in the correct direction. So I had a couple lovely 1/2 or 2/3 pints at some of those places, because they've got both sort of slightly odd measures. So you have to kind of, but you're not going to complain if someone says, do you want a 2/3 instead of a half? You're like, it's fine. But really, really, fantastic service, people who really have like clearly been trained on what they make, who know kind of inside and out. Oh, if you don't like this, you might like that. So I think you saw that real kind of, a very professional approach to it. Sometimes you can go to a tap room and it can seem slightly slapdash, but this was not that. It still feels like a pub, but with a real sort of craft beer ethos, but really lovely staff. And that's also, again, a very central place. You can walk to it. So it would be a very easy city to do some nice pub crawls in. And at some point we should team up with the Belfast Women's Beer Collective folks and, do a thing. So putting that into the universe.
Definitely fun things to be had there. And one maybe more thing, even though it's just across the border, you almost don't expect that things like prices are going to be that different. But tell us a little bit about that. Are they quite different?
It was an interesting thing, because there is a bit of not quite sticker shock, but yeah, just, it's still obviously cheaper than, going to London. I think you're going to see prices more on par with like going to, say, Manchester or Leeds or something like that. But, there were certain things where I was like, this is probably more than I would pay normally once you've done the conversion in your head. Nothing crazy, but I do want to say I was paying sort of, £6-ish a pint, that kind of thing for the craft beers. Like the other stuff was a little cheaper, but like I know the lovely bottle of the Heaney that I got was like 7 or 8. But again, you're at a venue, that's always going to be a bit of a markup. It was cheaper in pubs. But yeah, I think, and it's easy to sort of just, hand wave that out of your head and be like, I'll figure it out later when you sort of see all those, conversion charges on your bill later. But
it's actually really interesting, because when I've been over to the UK now, obviously I've not been over to Belfast, but I've often found that drinks are cheaper there. That said, it depends, because I'm often a bit of a grocery store shopper. I often do that, drinks at home, and it is a little bit different. But even at pubs, getting cask for, let's say, £4 a pint, which is whatever, €5, is still slightly cheaper than what we'd be paying at €6, often €7 a pint.
It's still definitely cheaper than here, but I think I would say some of the more high octane craft stuff was certainly edging up price wise, but I think that's where you're seeing the difference. I think you could have got, like if you went in for a Guinness, that was going to be certainly cheaper than what you're going to pay around here. Where I think what was it people were paying in Temple Bar for St. Patrick's Day? It was like €9 a pint or something insane. Like you can walk literally a block away and not do this, but come on.
But there's no crack there, Lisa. I mean, it's only in Temple Bar.
Is there really crack in Temple Bar though?
I mean, there's,
there's manufactured crack.
I will say I had the funniest experience. I was at the Black Sheep on the Thursday night before St. Patrick's Day. A load of American teenagers come in. They're all wearing like flat caps, like they're in like goddamn Peaky Blinders. It was hilarious. They all walk in. They stand there. I'm in there because I'm having the time of my life, having Cask at the Black Sheep. So Cask is back at the Black Sheep. I'm just sitting, relaxing. I'm watching them. And they must have been probably like 18, 19. So, old enough to drink here, but not old enough to actually drink in the States. They must have stood there, speaking amongst themselves going, what do we do? What do we do? And you could hear them like being like, do we go to the bar? Does someone bring it? And they just stood there and stood there. And then they turned around and walked back out. And I was like, this is amazing. So
that is so funny.
It was hilarious. But the matching hats, I was just like, oh my God, it was, it was embarrassing, but hilarious.
They should have gone to Boston.
For real. Yeah, that looked like a lot of fun. No. And I know where they could get served there. It's not going to be a problem there either. So,
Well, I'll tell you what, that's awesome. Like, I'd love to go to Belfast. And Katie, I think that you and I need to go, and not just alone, but you and I need to go and have some nights in Belfast, because
Yeah,
how
without the
can we
without
not? It's just there. It's just
the
there.
kids.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it was really, because the first time I went, we went, as a family, and it was a little more constrained, even though, there were still places we could go and it was fine, but it's nice to just, well, but then if you're me, I was like, I'm out and it's 10:30. Oh, and I was like, I'm back at my hotel and it's 11. Oh. But, and then I just collapsed because I can't stay up late. But
You're such a 9 p.m. to bed baby. Anyway.
I really am. I really am. But I do have to say, there are so many places you can go. And I think because, there's, proper student vibe too, that there's that, that element. I think there's a lot of more affordable and some interesting sort of cheap eats at the, kind of the university end of town. So
definitely. I think our road trip this year is going to have to be, or a train trip, doesn't have to be a road
very
trip.
affordable on the trains, right there. And again, I have to say, as someone who has a lot of Hilton and Marriott points, there are a lot of places to use your points, because this trip was basically free for me hotel wise. And when I go back up in May, I'm also using points again. No points or no actual cost for the hotel, and breakfast is included. And again, I have to say, the other important thing about Belfast, they have a market in their market building. Now, it's only a weekend market, but there's a proper market, and I got gorgeous chocolates. There were breakfast baps everywhere. I mean, just, I have to say, I was like, this is doing it right. So, Belfast has, a working market. Limerick, I feel like everyone except us has a working market. So hopefully
Cork has a good market as well.
Yeah, Cork as well. Yeah. Hopefully this festival that's just finished for, Patrick's weekend will lead to a more permanent market here. Because I think that was mostly, it was at the fruit and veg market they were in. I think the Ivy markets are still not in a fit state to do anything in. But
I had great plans to go to this festival over the last weekend. I didn't. I had a very lazy weekend at home, and actually it's funny, because I think that I've probably officially earned the, you can tell I've lived in Ireland for a while badge, because I didn't make any plans for Paddy's Day.
We went out Thursday night.
Couldn't be asked, to be honest.
It's mostly like home Friday.
A lot of the local people just leave leave Dublin and go somewhere else for the day.
Actually, leave the tourist tours. Leave the tourists to do their thing. Leave the young people to do their thing. We bought some Guinness and played some board games and fell asleep on the couch. It was grand. So
that's all good. The only time I even went out is I went to my my pub right around the corner and had a Scraggy Bay, and that was in the afternoon. No one was in there. It was basically empty, and then I went home. So
bargain.
It was still good.
So Katie, when you travel, whether it is close or far, let's assume that it's an airplane flight away though, right? Do you like to drink at the airport and on the plane?
It depends on what time of the day I'm flying. I don't think I can't really stomach a beer at 5 o'clock in the morning on a red eye. I can't.
Yeah, not for me.
If we're after 10 a.m., definitely. Unless I'm driving on the other side. There's always
very
that.
Responsible answers here. Yep.
Yeah,
Lisa, you're nodding in agreement.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's one of those things where if it's like an afternoon or evening flight, then okay. But it's also, to me, kind of the length of the flight too. Like sometimes shorter is not better. You don't necessarily want to pregame and then be stuck on the plane waiting to, get off to find a bathroom at the other end. Or again, sometimes you're like, I'd rather save those calories till I've had food and I've been out walking somewhere and wherever I'm going, and all of that. But that said, I think there are others where I'm like, I'm in this place. This is the only chance I'm going to have this beer from wherever. And again, usually then it's not 5 a.m. It's probably an afternoon or evening flight. But there've definitely been times when I've been like, I am now going to park myself in the airport lounge and have whatever the local beer is. So, especially if I'm not paying. So that's
always a bonus.
Yeah,
I think I'm fairly similar. I think I like the idea of airport beers and flight beers more than I actually like partaking in them. I've got this like weird, call it a travel anxiety, and I'm not anxious about that much, but traveling I'm a little bit anxious about, and I don't like to be late for my flight. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm one of those, people that is at the airport like 6 hours in advance, even though it's a 1 hour flight. I'm that guy. So then you see, I might sit if I've got plenty of time, and if I'm in sight of my gate, I might have a beer, but only if there's many hours, to be able to get to the bathroom and to board and all the things. And I'm not really one for drinking on the plane unless it's a long haul flight, and then I might have a glass of wine. That's it, like one, just to almost, relax and go to sleep. That's my sort of vibe of it. But I saw people now on the trip. So for those who have never traveled to South Africa, highly recommended, but it's very long. So, the flight is, it depends on which route you go, but we go through the Middle East because it's just a little bit easier. So 8 hours to the Middle East to Doha, where we were, and then another sort of 8 hours down to Johannesburg. And I saw people on each leg of the flight, and they happened to be going the same flight as what we were on both legs, different flights and everything. People drinking like all the way along. And I
would be a mess.
Astounded. Yeah, I would be a mess too. Like, it's not just the anxiety, it's also the fact that you will need pee more often. Like, you don't get food, on tap as regularly as what you probably need to. You are already going to be dehydrated. So anyway, for me, that's my worst nightmare. But I love it, pulling up to the airport at 6 a.m. or whatever, and people are at those bars and they're smashing those beers down, and it's like crazy to me. Although,
the stag parties are the ones you always are like, oh, you're going to regret this later, lads. Like, that's
I don't know. If I'm going on a holiday with no kids, I will be smashing those beers, Thandi. I'm sorry.
You know what? Maybe that's it. Maybe it's once your kids are, if they're still under, can fend for themselves age, then you're slightly more responsible about it.
Yeah.
But I actually just didn't want to feel like shit. So I didn't want to land in South Africa after almost a 24-hour kind of journey and feel really run down. And actually, it was fine. So we landed somewhere around midday. In fact, it was like 10 a.m., which was great. It's nice to land in the morning. We had the whole day, had a bit of a snooze at my mom-in-law's place, and that was great. But jeepers, did we have, myself, my husband, and my son, did we have 3 weeks of back-to-back family, friends, etc. It was the first time since I've moved to Ireland, which was this year, it'll be 5 years ago. It's the first time being back home. So it was like a really big deal to go and see all the people and see how much has changed and all of that. So it was good times, but it was very busy. And so this is my hang my head in shame, but I didn't bring beer back from South Africa. And you know what? I didn't even drink that much beer while I was there. Well, I didn't drink that much of the interesting, amazing craft beer that I know is there. And there are some reasons for this, which is slight rant, slight observation, and mostly I'm just remorseful that I didn't make more of an effort. But guys, things are a bit different in South Africa. Now, we've had Apiwe on, and she explained some of the challenges around the South African craft beer scene during COVID and otherwise. And I think that COVID actually really stuffed up the market for a lot longer. There are some ripple effects that I can see, or maybe I'm imagining it, but I can see them in that South Africa, you could never buy beer at a grocery store. Like, it's just not a thing. It's something that I really like about Ireland and Europe in general, is that you can buy beer at your Tesco and beer at your Aldi and your whatever, your Super Value. It's not a thing in South Africa. You can buy wine at the supermarket, but not beer. And funny, you can buy non-alcoholic beer, which irritates me a little bit. But anyway, so often I'd go to the grocery stores, to just go and pick up a few bits and bobs here and there. And I'd often get there at funny times, or just because I was at a grocery store, the liquor stores are sometimes next door, sometimes not. But I'd often only be able to really get wine, depending on what time I was there or whatnot. So we drank lots of wine. Thank goodness South African wine is really, really good. I'm a big fan. But the other thing that I noticed was, no, wait, let me go back to the grocery store thing. there was a campaign probably 6 years ago, and I'm sure it was ongoing, and there are bodies trying to get this passed, but the beer industry feels it's very unfair that wine can be sold in the supermarkets, but beer can't. And I'm not just talking about craft beer. I'm talking about mainstream sort of SAB, InBev kind of vibes beer cannot be sold at a typical supermarket, which is very annoying for everybody, because liquor stores have to have different licenses. They've got different trading hours. They've got a whole bunch of different rules, and yet wine is allowed. So I don't know what's happened to that campaign, and I almost really want to see what was happening with that campaign, because it was the biggest difference that I've noticed, having been here for nearly 5 years, was that I couldn't go into the local closest store and just buy a range of whatever craft beers they decided, or even commercial beers. So what ended up happening was that I drank a lot of wine. My husband and I went to like an event. It was like a Valentine's thing where we made gin, which was so fun.
Oh, fun.
And it was really cool because it wasn't just the let's mix your botanicals into already made gin. We literally distilled it into our own bottles, which was so fun. And what a great event, whether you're a couple, whether you're a work group that needs team building, whatever. It was just such a fun thing to do. But anyway, we had now 2 bottles of 500 mils of gin. So of course we drank that. My mom had brought brandy, which is another South African staple and favorite. So we had brandy, we had gin, we had wine, we had absolutely everything except for all the delicious craft beer. And partly because I couldn't find it at supermarkets, partly because I went then and asked all of my friends, because I'd gone to a couple of liquor stores specifically to try and find the things that I'd not tried before, all the new things that the brewers had come out with, and taste the new breweries that have opened. And I was really disappointed, actually, because the liquor stores that I went to, which were obviously just the ones that were close enough by, had a lot of the almost big brand craft beer. So, every country has got their mainstays and their staples, the big guys. They had a lot of that, but they didn't have the little guys. And that kind of annoyed me. And so I supported a little bit of the big guys, just wanting to retaste some of the beers that I'd had. One was a golden ale from a brewery called Devil's Peak. It's a lovely beer. Enjoyed it just as much as I had 5 years ago. No surprises. But it didn't go too far in trying to, support those guys, because they are very, very big. So having asked all my friends, where can I find like a good range? There's hardly online stores. And I think this is a product of COVID, because there were a few online stores that were trading before COVID, and COVID just killed it, because South Africa went to such a prohibition that those businesses just died. And it was really unfortunate. So there's a few online stores, but not really, not something that I could have availed of in the time that I was there well. And in the liquor stores that I was at, just none of the small guys or smaller guys. So I was a bit disappointed. And then I went to what used to be quite a famous craft beer pub called Beer House. And its claim to fame was 99 beers on the wall, basically 99 taps. Now, they'd say bottles on the wall, but it wasn't always 99 draft taps. It was 99 varieties of beer. And it had been recently taken over by different management and ownership and all of that. And I was kind of sad, because they kept a lot of the ethos, but almost none of the beers were available. And I was just a bit pissed off with that. And I was like, this is not, why bother? Just become the Heinekens and just become one of those bars. You'll do fine. You're in the right area anyway. Who cares? Like, stop worrying about it. Own who you are. However, so despite the fact that I couldn't get to the right liquor stores to find the right beers from the breweries that I really wanted to support, I did go to a homebrew festival. And it was one of the highlights of the trip, because I was very involved in the homebrew club back when I lived in Johannesburg. And in the sort of Johannesburg, or the provincial region there are under one umbrella group called the Warthogs. There are 4, sometimes 5, depending on how we feel, different chapters of the same homebrew club. And it's just different areas of kind of the greater Johannesburg, Pretoria region. And this was the sort of Pretoria side, so slightly north regions beer fest, and each one of the clubs takes a bit of a seasonal turn. So generally Pretoria's got summer beer fest, East Rand, which was where I was from, had winter beer fest, and then there's often Oktoberfest or something. So I went to the summer beer fest, which was so fun, and I wanted to tell you guys, because what made it really interesting, this is not one of the bigger homebrew fests necessarily. It's actually well, it can be quite bigger, but it's on the sort of smaller side. There were 38 beers on tap, and I'm looking down the list, I'm re-looking at the menu, which was really fun, because it's not just IPAs or pale ales. So I've got a lager, I've got a specialty IPA, I've got an imperial stout, we've got a cider, an amber lager, which actually won first place.
Wow.
Because there's generally BJCP as well as voters' choice. And sometimes those are different prizes, sometimes they're the same. This one won voters' choice, was this amber lager, an Australian sparkling ale, Schwarzbier, Czech amber lager, sweet stout, Kolsch, best bitter, Munich Dunkel, fruit beer, Czech premium pale lager, Kolsch, Saison, fruit beer, porter. There are a few IPAs in between, blonde, amber bitter, Altbier, Munich Dunkel again, fruit and spice, experimental. So you can see it was very much such a mixed bag.
Yeah. Oh, how interesting.
And I loved it. It was so fun. So, I mean, it was one of my sort of things, once every quarter or whatever, was to go to a homebrew festival, because I've said it on this pod before and said it many times outside of it, but I really find that the most interesting, unique beers are happening in the homebrew scene and not in the commercial scene. And it's for good reason. Commercial guys have got a lot more to worry about, more than whether this concept can work or whether people will like it. It's, it's much more about repeatability and consistency and marketability and ingredient costs and all these things. So homebrew festivals are really the place to go if you like to try new things. So it was really nice to be able to go to the Summer Beer Fest and enjoy the fruits of many of the brewers' labors. It was just lovely. And it was one of those things that I wanted to bring up in contrast, because I'm part of the homebrew club here, and it's not something that we're, I think, legally allowed to do, is have homebrew festivals. I think there's some legalities and insurance things.
Right.
And you know what? There's a bunch to it, but it's one of those things that I knew I missed, but I really realized when I was there how much I missed it. That homebrew fest vibe. It's such a culture.
How fun. Yeah, because I feel like even the ones in the States, like especially when I was judging homebrew competitions there, it's the same thing. They have to be a closed kind of a thing. It can't be happening.
It's a private event.
You can't serve anything to the public. It's very, they've got, like anything there, they've got the funny laws about where you can and can't do that. But that's fascinating that's where there's the real innovation. And but it sounds like too, maybe people have had to do that since there just wasn't availability for the past few years. They've really kind of taken the bull by the horns, as it were. So.
And how does it work, Thandi? Do the home brewers just brew a keg each, or?
Basically, so when you if you're a home brewer and you want to pledge your beer, it means that you're committed to brewing the beer from your own cost and serving either bottles or from a keg. It's not specified whether you have to have bottles or keg. It's just you have to donate 20 liters of your beer.
Oh, okay.
That you at least 20 liters, but 20 liters is the minimum. So you buy your ingredients. You do all the things. It's a gift. However,
it's a bigger commitment. Yeah, it's not like here's the 2 bottles you're going to be judging.
Exactly. Yeah. In exchange for that, that person will have a certain number of free tickets to give to family members, friends who will gain access to the event. Normally the event, besides those kind of tickets that the brewers are allowed to invite friends, they're normally only accessible to the members or guests of members of the club.
Yeah.
So, I could bring in 5 of my friends if I bought 6 tickets, let's say. And then what happens is that you go in to the festival and you've got all these people with their cooler boxes and their kegs, and people can get quite creative with their jockey boxes and things, and quite decorative, and people have got such interesting brewery names, and some people dress up. It's like it's really fun. It's so fun. And everybody almost wants to vie for your attention a little bit. Come taste this, come taste this. But what you typically get is a menu, like a printed menu, so that you know where to go for what. And you'll typically get like a token or 2, depending on how the competition is run. And you vote for your favorite with a token. Sometimes we've done it by app before.
Okay.
Like there's various ways of doing it. But here's where the interesting, I think, part of it is that when you go to a person, let's say we've got Cold Tap Brewery over here, you're not getting a pint, you're getting tasters. So you get a glass with your wristband or whatever you've got with it, and you just get tasters of everything, but it's unlimited. So you could have a taster of every single beer, and you could go around a second go, or you could effectively find 2 or 3 that you like and just keep tapping them off. And when the breweries are finished, or when the brewers stocks are finished, then that one packs up, and that's where it goes. Typically, there's also a BJCP judging of the beers around the sort of around the corner while a lot of people are enjoying the beers. And typically, you'd have a best of show, which is the BJCP sort of first, second, third, in terms of points, and that's your sort of beers of the day. But you'll also get the people's choice or the people's favorites, first, second, third. And people tend to win. So the brewers tend to win things like vouchers to the homebrew stores, or a 20 kilo bag of malt, things like that. It's not enormous prizes, but they're lovely prizes. It's always something nice, and generally very well supported by the homebrew stores. And there are a good few. So, they often put up their own stands too, and they show what their bespoke kits can make by, putting it on tap and having people try it. And it's just very fun. So it's a bit of a closed event. I think at this one, there was probably 100 people, maybe a bit more, but probably not much more than 150. So it was small enough. But you're in a real little vibey kind of place. You often, if you don't know people at the beginning, you'll certainly know them at the end. And people want to talk to you about their beers. And, often the brewers themselves want to talk to you about their process, and they want to see whether are you a home brewer or are you just a drinker? Where do I pitch my argument? But It's just really good fun. And it was lovely to see, and very vibey. I think the homebrew scene is still alive and well, big time. Which is amazing.
That's so great to hear. And it's a funny thing that, picking up on some of what you said about the grocery stores and things like that. Like I was again, when I was in the Deer's Head in Belfast, chatting with a lovely couple from Preston. He was from Preston. She was actually originally from Japan, and then they were talking about Brexit, and obviously, that has, made everything problematic, as we've seen with so many breweries closing, I would say, especially in the UK mainland over there. But really, really interesting to sort of just compare, contrast how there's still that perception that if your craft beer is sold in a grocery store in the UK, you've sold out, it's bad. And we do not have that here on this island. We do not, that's good. More people can get it. It's great. And he, he agreed. Again, we had a lovely chat, but it's interesting that that's kind of the beer nerd perception.
Yeah.
I would say, especially in England, maybe not as much in Scotland, but just interesting to me that there's that kind of difference where it's and we're in your sort of high end bottle shops will stop stocking you if you can buy it in your Lidl or something, and you're like, but it's so different from here, where people are excited to have people have accessibility and all of those things. So I think that's something, I wonder how long that attitude can kind of prevail, just given kind of the economic realities with so many breweries closing over there week on week. And hopefully that will slow down, and this is just kind of a natural, if you like, contraction versus something driven by broader forces. But I don't know, I'm really curious, and I know I'm going to be getting over certainly to London more often now for work, so not sad about that. Happy to be going over more frequently to be getting my cask, hook up and all of that. But that's something I'm really curious to see, is how are there sort of different trends, and what's, it's such a small distance away, but I feel like there's such a gulf in kind of perception and certainly availability. I mean, and that's, partially just down to numbers, of course.
Yeah.
But it's really, really curious to see what else is kind of happening over there. So I don't know. I know, Katie, you said you didn't see much on this trip, but did you even see anything kind of walking by that caught your eye, sort of walking by pub or?
Well, our tube stop was on the Jubilee line, so I was passing Bermondsey, and I was like, "Oh,
Nice.
will we pop up here?" And they're like, "No, ma'am, we're going to the museum." I'm like, "Okay, fine."
This is an educational trip.
Yeah. Well, it was St. Patrick's Day as well, so there was green beer.
Right.
Oh,
God.
There
no.
was, my husband got I think it was an apple sour, and it was green.
Oh Lord. Oh.
That's really funny because I don't know if it's here because I haven't looked, but there's a shooter in South Africa called apple sours, and it is green. And it is like really a sour apple shot. It's very funny.
Oh my gosh. It's funny. I was listening to Business of Beverages the other day. They had a very funny sort of Patrick's Day episode, but talking about kind of how it goes in Philly. And then I remembered, St. Patrick's Day is such a long event in America where it's a good 10 days either side of people being unpleasantly drunk, not happy drunk, but like unpleasantly drunk, kind of all the time for that period of time. Because I used to take, the regional rail into work every day, and literally like the weekend before to the weekend after, you would have to really watch yourself on the train, even during normal rush hour, because people would be just a mess. And you're like, how does this happen? Like, how? And it's like you get a smaller version of it for like Cinco de Mayo or other kind of, drinking holidays in air quotes. But St. Patrick's Day is the worst around Philly. And Philly is a great beer drinking city. People know not to drink green beer, not to do that. But especially like college students, they are still just such a mess, just getting so drunk, and people vomiting on the train and all of that kind of thing. You're like, guys, like, have some self-respect, like, time and place. But
to be fair, we were all there before.
Oh, it's true. It's true. It's true. And there have certainly been times when I've been like, I found myself on the train. How did this happen? But I was always going the right direction, going home, no. So.
Oh no,
yeah.
I don't have any such dignified stories. Don't ask me for these.
I have the time I found myself on the train on the way home, and then I woke up and I was past my stop, so I got the next one back, and then I missed my stop again. It's like, what the hell? Come on, you idiot! Like,
yeah, you never want to be that guy or girl or whatever. Yes.
This would be a lot more forgiving if there were things like 24-hour trains. But, you get to a certain point of the evening where that train's not turning around.
No.
It's not going anywhere.
Oh, God. It wasn't in Ireland.
No.
You'd be waiting like till the next day for a train in Ireland.
Oh goodness. Well, maybe it's just a quick segue then, because I know we're getting on, but I'm like, what are some of the things we're either looking forward to or missing kind of travel wise? Because I know the one that I'm like, I would love to be doing more brewery tours of some of the farther flung is the wrong word, because they're not even that far away, but like I would love to go to Meskin or Heaney or Kinnegar or just some of these other breweries that there's not a good way to get to on public transit. And I know there are some independent tour companies, and that's great. That's wonderful. But I do feel like there's a real opportunity there that, Felcha Island or someone could have some more accessible, sort of DIY tours, if you like, where people aren't going to drive. There's a way to get to these places. So I just would love there to be kind of more options to take a bus or take a train or train and bus or whatever to some of these breweries, where it would be so much fun to go and tour and then maybe visit a local pub. But it's really hard to do just without a car. So, and again, you don't want to encourage people to drive and then go drink. So
no, it's actually the thing that annoys me. I mean, I have a car, but I don't want to drive to these places because I actually want to enjoy it. And I don't want to have to rely on cabs. And I just don't always think everything is connected enough to really rely on public transport. It's just not great. It almost sounds like we need a beer tour company that does, weekend trips to, let's go to Donegal for the weekend and go and see, the breweries and pubs there, and just make it
and an
group.
accessible price point, not something where you're
Yes.
charging it to American or Japanese tourists, which again, fair play to them. Good,
Yes.
do that for like, your big tours, but it would be great if, like you're saying, you could do a one night overnight in Donegal
Yeah.
or someplace that's just not served by public transit well.
Indeed. With a
Here.
private coach.
I know. I'm
with
looking
only
forward
beer
to.
loving people.
I know. Eurovision.
It's
I did
coming.
not get tickets.
None
I
of us could get
No.
tickets. I know.
Devastated. I had every single error that Ticketmaster had. I got it. And
No,
then when
I didn't even try for tickets because I couldn't even get accommodation, so I wasn't even going to bother. Ugh.
I had booked something miles away in Warrington, and I was like, you know what? If I get tickets, I will make this work. But no.
Yeah.
So shout out. Who is which pubs are going to be showing the Eurovision? And
Yes,
look,
we want to hear
Rascals,
about this.
looking at
We
you, I
want to
won't
hear.
complain. I won't complain that the music is too loud.
Not for Eurovision. Not for Eurovision.
Not for
Hear,
Eurovision.
hear.
Who, apart from obviously the George and Panty Bar, are going to have it on? But where else? Where
Doyle's
Panty-
Corner is going to have a party, and in
they?
fact, they're going to have. There will be. Oh goodness, there is going to be a drag queen who I think is called Grania Knees.
Get on your knees. I love
hosting
it.
the party.
Brilliant.
So here for that. Again, that's also easy because it's right by my house. But we want to hear who is going to be having a Eurovision party, because if we're only traveling within Dublin, we want to know about your Eurovision parties. We may just turn up. Just
this will be
a threat.
saved for the Eurovision episode. But is it a thing to go to a watch party versus watching at home? I want to hear the pros and cons. But not on this episode.
No, we will
Okay.
get to it. But I think this is a good shout out to say, tell us if we should be coming to your venue for
Indeed.
Eurovision. Just saying.
Yes, good shout out for that, for sure. Well, I think that unless we've got a few more travel tips, stories, or anecdotes to get on with, we might just wrap it up with the pubs. Please tell us where your Eurovision parties are, because I'm yet to be convinced, but it's a debate.
This is a strong year. I know we're going to get into it, but I think my only other, again, shout out is kind of, are there beer festivals happening this summer? I've not really heard of much yet. So that's another thing I think we want to hear. Are there things happening? Should we be booking travel somewhere? So
could they also not all happen within 2 months, please?
Yes, spread out.
It actually gets very expensive and very difficult to manage the logistics of all these beer things if they're all in July and August, or June and July. However,
Well, if they're outdoor in Ireland, we can't.
Well,
I suppose we can't even guarantee the weather during July and August, but odds are it might be a little bit better.
Yeah, but I think we would love to be booking travel now if those are things coming up, regardless of where they are. So let us know.
Do let us know. Wild Beer Fest in Mullingar is happening though.
Yes.
22nd of April. So for those who haven't bought the tickets yet, do that. Yep.
Rascals Happy Days, of course. Also, local
Maybank holiday weekend.
Yep. Indeed. So we have got a few things coming up to the
all
beginning
I
of
know.
end of spring, early summer. But yeah, we'll see what happens in summertime. But so breweries and venues, let us know, both on events happening. They don't have to be festivals, but things that are happening, as well as so we can make our travel plans and budget for things and do all the stuff. And for those who are doing a Eurovision watch party, we want to hear about it. We will share it with our dedicated fan base of Eurovision fans, lol, but we will share it for you.
They exist.
Oh, they do. So let us know. Fantastic. Now, maybe final question. If you guys could go to only one destination, be it a city or a country, but only one place, as a specific tour, like travel for beer scenario, where would it be? Quick fire round. There's no wrong answers here.
Oh, that's a tough one, but a really good one. Oh. I don't know, Katie, you look like you
I'm-
have thoughts.
I'm thinking Germany or Czechia.
Mm.
What can I say? Good beer.
Yeah, those
Mhm.
But-
both are
But
super appealing.
they're appealing for their established beer styles, and it's like I don't know much about their new. I suppose a lot of their beer just is local beer. You know, it's not, a lot of it isn't multinational owned. Some of it is. So I don't know about their scenes there. I just know that I like the beers that I've had from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like I'm either going to be, sort of boring, if you like, and say I like going to Yorkshire or the north of England just because I can get my cask. It's all lovely. But I've heard so many good things lately about the scene in sort of Barcelona and sort of those parts of Spain. I've heard there's a lot of good beer, and I feel like I don't know anything about it. That might be interesting to just go and try a place I've never been and try the beer. So that might be. I feel like maybe that's more of a winter trip when it's cold here, but I would be really curious to see some of what's going on.
And also,
one.
when we were at White Hag, there was a lot of really good Italian breweries.
There were, yeah, that was surprising to me. Yeah.
So maybe,
Yeah. File that one away too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What about you,
Now-
Thandi?
I might have to say Belgium because I've actually never been yet.
Oh,
I know, it's crazy. Don't look at me with such horror, like
It's not your
aghast
fault.
horror
No.
faces. I know. I've never been to Belgium except for a very quick drive through when I was on a Kentucky tour many years ago. So I would love to go to Belgium, but actually, Katie, you're kind of on the money. I'd probably go to Germany. Like, yeah.
Cheap
I want
flights.
I just want to do beautiful lagers for a bit. That said, I think you could go almost any country in the world and just experience something amazing. Yeah. So it could be anywhere. Take me on free trips. I'll make the best of it.
We will review your destinations for you. So we might
Oh,
not always be
yes, that's
nice,
a job.
but we'll review them.
That's a job to have. Hey, my goodness. The dream. Okay, friends. Well, thank you for sharing your travel stories and anecdotes and tips and casks and all the things. We've loved hearing them. And thank you to everybody at home listening along. Final reminder, we're on the socials. You can support us on the website. We're at beerladiespodcast.com and we're at beerladiespod everywhere that you can find us. So yeah, until next time, happy travels. See you all. Goodbye.